All right, let's dive right into this explainer. You know, when we think of Napoleon Bonaparte, we usually picture the supreme military genius, right? The guy whose very name made European monarchs literally tremble. The emperor who completely reshaped the world map. But today, we're exploring a massive paradox, because the very man who brought entire empires to their knees was utterly subservient to a woman in a Paris salon. It's a story of absolute power, blinding passion, and a betrayal that fundamentally changed the course of history. Okay, let's break down this crazy contrast. On one hand, you have the commander-in-chief of the French army, a guy issuing orders to the Pope and dictating terms to kings. But on the other hand, you see his hidden reality. He was in this helpless, almost pitiful emotional state, essentially acting like a servant, desperately begging his own wife for just a single letter. A total master of the battlefield, yet completely defenseless against his own heart.
Part 1. Invincible General, Defeated Lover.
To really understand how this happened, we've got to look at the beginning. When they met, Josephine was a 32-year-old widow looking for protection and stability for her kids. But the 27-year-old Napoleon, he was madly, unconditionally consumed by her. So they marry in March of 1796, and this lightning-fast timeline is absolutely crucial. Just 12 days after the wedding, Napoleon is forced to leave to command the army of Italy. 12 days. There was literally no honeymoon phase. That abrupt separation instantly created this extreme long-distance tension that would just tear his mind apart.
Part 2. Love Letters from the Battlefield.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer absurdity of the situation. Napoleon is out there pulling off these spectacular, mind-boggling military victories, actively reshaping Europe, right? But his mind is entirely fixated on her absence. His soldiers are celebrating, but he's pacing his tent, agonizing over her silence. And the communication gap is wild. Napoleon is sending pages and pages of burning, obsessive passion. And Josephine, when she actually bothered to reply, she sent maybe 3 lines tops. In fact, to her friends in Paris, she actually mocked him, calling his devotion ridiculous. Just listen to the actual words he was sending from the front lines. He wrote, "Give me 1,000 kisses, for my blood is burning." Wow, it's just incredibly raw, isn't it? You can really hear him descending into this intense, unrequited infatuation. That is not the voice of a conqueror. That is a deeply vulnerable man laying his entire soul bare to someone who's barely paying attention. But wait, as her silence drags on, it gets much darker. He writes, "You don't love me. My heart is breaking. You leave me in this terrifying anxiety." Look at that escalation. He goes from passionate longing straight to deep paranoia and then to agonizing pain. He's winning every single battle on the field, but he's losing his mind over her neglect, terrified that his worst fear, that she just doesn't love him, is actually true. Part 3. Betrayal in the Milan Palace. So, eventually, after exhausting literally every excuse she could invent to stay and party in Paris, Josephine is forced to travel to Italy. She arrives at the magnificent Serbelloni Palace in Milan. And you'd think, okay, finally this reunion will calm his burning anxiety, right? Nope. Not even close. Instead of comforting him, she actively neglects him right in front of his own army. She completely ignores his emotional needs, throws herself into the social scene, and surrounds herself with the attention of young military officers. She treated the supreme commander of the army like an afterthought. And out of that group of officers comes the ultimate betrayal. Enter Charles Hippolyte. He was this young, attractive, super engaging officer, and Josephine starts this deeply humiliating affair with him. It got so bad that this guy practically became the master of her household. It was the ultimate insult, the affair that finally shattered Napoleon's heart and turned Europe's greatest military genius into a domestic joke. I want you to pause for a second. Put yourself in his shoes. How does the master of Europe react to being a laughingstock? Just imagine being the supreme commander, demanding absolute loyalty from thousands of troops in life-or-death combat, only to know that back home, you're being mocked and deeply betrayed by the one person you absolutely worship. So the crucial point is how he handled it. When the truth finally became undeniable, his initial rage was, as you'd expect, explosive. He almost divorced her right then and there. But, and here's the crazy part, when Josephine brought her crying kids to plead for her, Napoleon actually softened just enough to pardon her. He swallowed his pride to avoid a massive public scandal. But make no mistake, they stayed married on paper, but that pure, burning, passionate love, that permanently died. Part 4. The Emperor Looks for an Heir.
And this brilliantly illustrates the massive shift that happens next. We enter a totally new era. The desperate lover is gone, replaced by the cold, pragmatic emperor. He realizes romance is a dead end. He has to focus on legacy now. Look at this iconic coronation image. Josephine is kneeling, receiving the crown. She gets to be the Lady of Victory, securing all that glory she always craved. But the irony is just devastating. She has the literal crown, but kneeling right there, she has zero power left in their relationship. He's the master now, and his decisions are no longer guided by an obsession with her.
Napoleon starts making what we can call the imperial calculation. And the logic is simple and honestly ruthless. 1. Pure love is dead. 2. Josephine proved she was unfaithful and unreliable. And 3. The absolute biggest factor. The empire requires a bloodline. A conqueror doesn't just need a wife to stand next to him. He needs a legitimate heir to secure his legacy and keep France from falling back into chaos after he's gone. And sadly, Josephine just couldn't give him a child. But you know what's fascinating? 5. That is the number of years Napoleon spent in agonizing inner conflict before he actually did anything about it. Even after the betrayal, even knowing he desperately needed an heir politically, it still took him 5 long years to finally bring himself to officially divorce his first love. It really goes to show that some tiny trace of that early devotion was always lingering.
But, well, the inevitable finally happens. December 15, 1809, the emotional saga officially ends. Napoleon formally announces the divorce from Josephine. Political reality fully takes the wheel. He tells her that his duty to France and the absolute necessity of an heir just have to override his personal feelings. The romantic chapter of his life is decisively slammed shut, and the dynastic chapter begins.
And so the quest for a bloodline begins. He immediately sets his sights on an Austrian princess, Marie-Louise, seeking a royal union to legitimize his empire and give him that son he desperately craves. But it leaves us with this incredible, provocative question to think about. How will this cold, calculated quest for a child, completely stripped of the burning passion he once had for Josephine, end up reshaping Europe all over again? Well, that is a question that would define the rest of his reign, and honestly, the rest of history.